What's up, guys? Welcome to the Put Me In Coach podcast,
where we go beyond the headlines and deep dive everything NFL.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Andy.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. What's going on? How are you?
What's happening? I'm good, man. Well, I mean, I'm all right. We're doing the Packers today, and
yeah,
they're the ops. So, no, they're a fun team. They're cool. They're a nice fun team.
Yeah, we are. You know, everybody who's watched our stuff and probably knows now that we're Lions fans. So it's an in-division rival. It's always tricky, but I think this video will be proof that we're not biased about the Bears because, at least for me,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I love this team.
I have respect for this team. You know what I mean? Like, I like this. This was a fun team when we were kids. The Brett Favre years, the Aaron Rodgers years. Like, they were always, the kings of the North. You know what I mean?
There sits the only king I mean to bend my knee to. The King of the North!
Like
Absolutely.
The crown was heavy for years and years and years and years. So they're never to be slept on. But you got to respect the winning culture.
Yeah, and the Kings of the North is a really good way of putting it. And it feels like right now they're the Prince of the North, with right behind the Lions, but they're getting a little too good at sword fighting. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of thing where it's like, real. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the King's real. Looking down, the Prince is like, Jon Snow, like just like ending people in sword fights. And it's kind of like, I sort of feel like my run as king is like going to be kind of short here. So I better like do some shit and for this civilization before I get like absolutely knifed down by this prince. So I am definitely excited as a fan, of the NFL for this team this year. There's a lot to talk about. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll get into it, man. Roll the Packers clip. So we'll start with, last season, the way that we do with all of these. Before we get into kind of what we think about this year, we like to look back at what happened last year. It's a really, really interesting season for Green Bay. Obviously, the big storyline, the big note going into the season was Aaron Rodgers is no longer a Packer. And, in my lifetime, it's only been Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. So it was a big sigh of relief as a Lions fan that really only lasted about 6 weeks. But it was there for a minute, right? We were like, okay, it's over. Like, no more Hall of Fame quarterback. And we'll get to Jordan Love, who was the successor of Aaron Rodgers, and kind of how all that played out. That's kind of its own conversation. But in terms of last year, kind of a tale of two seasons. And, touching on Jordan Love, it seems like the team kind of went where Love went. He struggled a little bit early on with consistency for the first half of the season. But once it clicked and you saw what was going on and you saw what, Lafleur was putting together offensively, who we'll touch on in a bit, this team became a bit frightening. And it kind of reminded me of the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Oklahoma City Thunder. They're the youngest roster in the NFL, and they will be this year, but they were last year as well. And to get this kind of play and production out of a first-year starter with the youngest roster in football, it doesn't bode well for the future of the NFC North if you're Bears or Lions fans, frankly. Vikings too. So Give me your thoughts on last season. What did you see that you liked? What did you see that maybe scared you a little bit? And what do you see that maybe was fraudulent?
As a Lions fan, I really liked the first half of the season. Really was scared of the second half of the season, and I was really hoping that they choked against the Niners. That interception that Jordan Love threw to seal the game was a huge sigh of relief to me as a Lions fan, just because I feel like it was just like poetic justice. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, us Lions fans kind of ran our mouths all off season, coming into the 23 season, because we kept you guys out of the playoffs, right? In that cold, windy game in Lambeau, where all you guys had to do was win the game, and you were going to the playoffs, and we had nothing to play for. And our guys rised above, and we, Jared Goff went out there and just balled, and we sent you guys home, and we sent you packing. And we kind of let that chirp all season, in good fairness to the rivalry, right? But it would have been real sweet for you guys to come and beat us again at home and send us home while you guys go to your Super Bowl. So I'm glad that didn't happen. I think this team's really good. As much as it pains me to say that, I think this team's really good. You look through their depth chart, you look through their roster as a whole, you look at their coaching staff, you look at everything they have, and you're like, man, there's just not that many holes here. I thought something was interesting when I was kind of taking my notes for this. They had 8 losses last year, which seems like a lot. You got kind of routed by Detroit. In week 4, you lost by 2 touchdowns. You got kind of routed by Minnesota. Week 8, you lost by 2 touchdowns. And you got kind of routed by Tampa Bay. In week 15, you lost by 2 touchdowns. There's a theme here, right? But in the rest of these games, I mean, week 2 against the Falcons, you lost by 2 points. Week 5 against the Vegas Raiders, you lost by 4 points. Week 7 against the Denver Broncos, you lost by 3 points. Week 10 against Pittsburgh, you lost by 4 points. And week 14 against the Giants, you lost by 2 points.
And in the divisional round against the San Francisco 49ers, you lost by 3 points. And you were really in that game. I mean, they played them tight.
You were fully in that game. Yeah, very much so. So, yeah, at least your regular season, all your losses were a combined 15 points. You add the playoff, that's 18 points. That's, you're talking about less than 3 scores over the course of an entire season. That can drastically change. The ball falls a different way. You guys are the last one to have the ball, opposed to they are the last ones to have the ball. You get to kick the winning field goal, opposed to them kicking the winning field goal. It's a lot of that's about timing. Like, it's a team that could have easily won, 12, 13 games had they, got hot a little earlier than they did.
Yeah, and in a game of fourth quarters and in a game of inches, that is where being the youngest roster in the NFL is relevant. Yeah. That's 100%. I think I would attribute that specific fact to a huge reason why there was, single-digit losses like that, right? It's sort of the opposite of that season Minnesota had a couple of years ago where they won all those games by like 2 points. Yeah. And you felt like that's the difference between a veteran team and, a rookie and sophomore team, right? It's just like when it comes down to it, you lose those really tight games a little more often than you'd like, but still impressive to go 9-8 in a year that was supposed to be a rebuild,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, and also, again, we didn't really touch on this, but I think, in our Cowboys video, we did a segment about it, so I won't do a segment here about this, but one thing that I will hearken back to, and I'm sure you will a couple times during this video, is the absolute reckoning that took place at AT&T Stadium Wild Card Weekend. If you want to give Bears, Vikings, and Lions fans nightmares, watch the tape of that game, because that was an absolute masterclass from the Green Bay Packers. And honestly, as somebody who invested in the Cowboys last year and kind of bought in, I have nothing but respect and admiration for this Packers team and what the performance they put on in that wild card weekend. That was incredible. Mind blowing.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say. You said it perfectly. Absolute masterclass and absolute routing. Took what, I think you and I perceived to be the second best team in the NFC, including Detroit. I mean, we were really high on the Cowboys last year, and absolutely spanked their fannies in their own house, and then gave a good scare to San Francisco. I mean, they're coming, and it sucks because I wanted Jordan Love to just be mid, and I was tired of the reign that the Packers had over the NFC North, but it seems to be that you guys are right back in it just after one season, and you're bastards for that. But
yeah, yeah, you are.
That's good for Packers fans.
Yeah, that go Pack go at Lambeau Stadium's gonna start hitting again. Like, oh man,
yes,
it's like
will.
We didn't even get a minute with the mic, did we?
No.
It's interesting. I don't know where you wanted to start here. How do you feel about starting with a bit of a diatribe on my end about this head coach?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you into it?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm into it, man. Let's do it.
This is something that it's weird, right? Because I don't generally get I don't want to say emotionally invested. I don't get too fired up about teams that aren't the Detroit Lions too much because. Yeah. Respectfully, like I have such a respect and appreciation for everybody in the league that if it's not my team, it's like I'm kind of watching things just more at this point as an analyst because of the channel we have. But something really got to me as I was doing research for this team, and it's something that's bothered me for a couple of years, and I haven't really had the outlet to kind of put it out there and get the temperature of the fan base, because I'm a Lions fan. I don't really talk to like Green Bay forums or whatever, right? I feel like Matt Lafleur is the most underrated, underappreciated, and disrespected head coach in the National Football League right now.
I'm not mad at that.
There, I said it. Feels good to get it off my chest. I'm going to get into why. First things first, let's debunk something immediately. The Super Bowl conversation needs to be done when we talk about coach and quarterback. Now, I know a lot of people I lost a lot of people with that already. When we talk about elite quarterbacks in this league, Patrick Mahomes has 3 rings. Lamar has 0 rings. Josh Allen has 0 rings. Joe Burrow has 0 rings. Matt Stafford has 1. CJ has 0. Jared Goff has 0. You go down the list, right? When we talk about head coaches, Doug Peterson is an older guy. He has 1. Mike Tomlin is an older guy, an older coach. He has 1. John Harbaugh has 1. Sean McVay, 1. Kyle Shanahan, 0. Mike McDaniels, 0. We go down, Dan Campbell, 0. We go down the list of these coaches and these quarterbacks, and just like you, I like the barbershop conversation of, well, he ain't won the ring, he ain't won the big one, until he gets the monkey off his back. And I understand it, and for years I bought into it. But the reality is, Andy Reid is the only active coach right now who's got a gauntlet of rings, and he didn't win them boys until he was in his 60s. So I don't want to hear this talk about no Super Bowl, you don't crack my list as a legitimate top-end head coach or quarterback. It's bullshit. That conversation needs to go away with the boomers. It's not a real conversation. Only a couple guys have rings, and frankly, they're all older coaches except for Sean McVay. So that's my first part of the rant. Where do you stand on that?
Church, baby. I totally agree. I mean, what are you gonna, what are you gonna do? Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, we're in a different era of the NFL, and it's not, you said it perfectly, right? The core 4 that we constantly refer to as being the upper echelon of quarterbacks is, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar, and you got one guy who's got 3, and then you got 3 guys that have none. It's hard to win Super Bowls. That's what makes Tom Brady so impressive. That's what makes Patrick Mahomes so impressive. That's what made Peyton Manning so impressive, was that they had multiples,
Yeah. And even winning one. I mean, again, Andy Reid is an old man. I lived my entire childhood watching Andy Reid coach on Sundays in Philadelphia, and he won
Philadelphia, yeah.
none. He didn't win a single goddamn ring, not one.
And his teams were always so good too.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, it's like you go down the list. Kirk Cousins, veteran quarterback, no Super Bowls. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys who didn't win one. So that particular thing that I hear used to debunk Lafleur because him and Rodgers didn't close one of those years, I understand it. I accept it as mostly kind of like respectfully low-level talking points, but I'm not going to indulge it anymore as an argument because it's just not valid to me. Let's talk about why I believe that this guy is a top coach and why the lack of that conversation bothers me. You know, perfect microcosm of this is, and I already know the answer, but do you know whenever the coaches are playing each other, their teams are playing each other in a game, you know, the four that I'm going to mention, they always do the cutaway in the broadcast booth with the Washington Redskins.
The 2013 Washington Redskins, coaching tree.
Yes, and you know it's Sean McVay, it's Kyle Shanahan, it's Matt Lafleur, and it's Mike McDaniel, and it's always the same kind of conversation, right? At least let's just keep it to last season, or the last couple of seasons since you know McDaniel's been with Miami as a head coach. It's always like, well, you got Sean McVay at the top of the list. You know, he won a Super Bowl. He turned the Rams franchise around. You got Kyle Shanahan, who runs the best system in the entire National Football League. And you've got Miami Mike, who is exciting, and he wears off-white sneakers and vapes on the sidelines and jokes around with reporters. And look at all that motion he runs. We've never seen anything like it in all the years. You know, he runs motion on 80% of plays. It's revolutionary. And, you know, you even got Matt Lafleur there, who coaches the Packers. Anyway, back to the game. You know, it's like that's how it always goes. It goes that way every time.
So I had to double check because I was thinking, you know, Raheem Morris was also on that staff, and so was Bobby Slowick. So now these are a couple more faces who will be on it next year. You know, now that Slowick is
yes, and to give those guys their due, it's an excellent coaching tree. I'm not poo-pooing it.
Wouldn't it make sense? Wouldn't it make sense if it was John Gruden that was at the head of that and not Jay Gruden?
Yes, way more sense.
Does that feel like not fitting? It's like Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden was the coach with all these genius coaches underneath him, and it's just he's just like out here losing games.
Jay Gruden L. Yeah, they all got like second
Super
chances.
L.
They're all going to probably
Right,
be like
literally.
Hall of Fame coaches when it's all said and done.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it's interesting, right? You go down the list, and I know Sean McVay's won a ring, and I would put him at the top of the list. Kyle Shanahan has not closed.
No, he sure hasn't.
You know, as much as I do enjoy watching the Miami Dolphins, and frankly, my brother and I joke all the time. We love Mike McDaniel, right? Like he's an exciting guy. He's funny. You know, all of that. But he hasn't made a playoff run even kind of. When we talk about Matt Lafleur, what bothers me is that he's never mentioned in the conversation with any of the top tier coaches in the National Football League. His name is always left off. So we discussed, you know, the obvious lack of Super Bowl kind of being the chink in the armor that we use to devalue Lafleur. And the other major one is Aaron Rodgers, right? He's an Aaron Rodgers merchant. It's because of Aaron. We can't really evaluate him because of Aaron. But what's really interesting is, you know, Aaron Rodgers has been the starter for Green Bay well before Matt Lafleur got there. And when we talk about the 2 seasons leading up to Matt Lafleur being hired, which would be 2017, 2018, those were the 2 years before Matt Lafleur took over, right? And a gentleman named Mike McCarthy was their head coach. You guys might know him now as Dallas's head coach. Once upon a time, he won a ring with Green Bay. In 2017, McCarthy went 7-9 with the Green Bay Packers. And then in 2018, the Green Bay Packers went 6-9-1. which resulted in a mid-season firing of Mike McCarthy. And I don't know how many of you know this, but I assume most of you do. When a coach gets fired before a season ends, things are bad. Things are not
really bad.
okay. They're not mediocre. They're bad. And, even prior to the last couple of bad seasons with Green Bay, the team went 15-1 in 2011. And that was the last time the team won at least 13 games with Mike McCarthy. They only did it once during the McCarthy tenure, actually twice. The first one was in 2007 with Brett Favre at quarterback. What's interesting about the backdrop of this is Matt Lafleur gets hired in 2019, and for 3 seasons in a row wins 13 games.
Yeah, doesn't Aaron win 2 MVPs in that stretch too? Am I mistaken about that? Yeah.
Back-to-back MVPs in 2020 and 21, I believe. So your situation that was, Lafleur took over this excellent, foolproof situation is not really real. Actually, he took over a team that was struggling immensely on defense, which has continued in the Lafleur era, with a slumping quarterback that we were all talking about. Is he a little over the hill? Is he a little washed? Did we see that one year from Aaron Rodgers where they won the Super Bowl and it's going to be a lot of empty calories? I mean, we know he's talented, but is he going to really do it again? Can they win? Can they compete? Then Mike McCarthy gets fired midseason, and that's the team that Matt Lafleur took over to go on and win 13 games 3 years in a row. That's impressive, and I can't Google this because I'm not nearly intelligent enough to know how, but I don't know ever a coach who took over a failing team at the time and won 13 games 3 years in a row. As far as I'm concerned, it's never happened. So to do that and to coach a quarterback who was in middle age, slumping a bit, to back-to-back MVPs, which also happens hardly ever. We never see a guy go back-to-back in the MVP race, but that's how good Aaron and this offense was with Lafleur. Look at what Davante Adams did. Look at what Aaron Jones did. This guy can coach offense with the best of them. And I'm so tired of on behalf of Packer fans and just football fans, his name not getting discussed in the pantheon of current coaches that are truly elite. The big test this year, in my opinion, he passed. We all wondered, coming off of 2 MVPs, coming off of these amazing seasons, multiple deep playoff runs. And again, I know that they didn't finish in the playoffs, but they still made a couple of NFC championship games. And really, largely defensively, I would say, were the reasons why those teams didn't win in the NFC Championship game. For those of you wondering, just Google what Raheem Mostert did on the ground in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago when he was with San Francisco against Green Bay. It was an absolute murdering. So, Again, these teams did make deep playoff runs. They just didn't get to a Super Bowl. Aaron departs. They have this really good run together in Green Bay. And, the big question is, what are they going to do with Love? How's Love going to look? All these conversations around Jordan Love and kind of preying on LaFleur's downfall while he was an Aaron Rodgers merchant. Wait, you and I know this. I mean, we're Lions fans. That was the talk amongst Lions. Oh, wait till they get rid of Aaron. Oh, boy, LaFleur's going to get exposed. Well, actually, not really. Turns out he just kind of ran it back again with a first-year starter and a team full of rookies. And that offense was really good. Again, I know I referenced it. If you have any questions about what this offense can do when it's clicking, just watch the Dallas game. For him to do that last year with that team is a testament to how good this coach is and how good this coach has been. Again, this whole idea, and it's again, I don't blame it. It's just casual sports fans, but it's like, how did they go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now a new guy who looks so good? Well, it's not because Jordan Love is that good. No offense. It's because Matt Lafleur is that good. The reason why Jordan Love looks so good right now is because Matt Lafleur is that good. The reason why Jordan Love is completing passes and making reads and calling audibles and throwing the ball the way Aaron Rodgers did with the flick of the wrist and the off balance throws. He looks like Rodgers out there. It's because of studying under Rodgers and having Matt Lafleur run this offense. And I wanted to do a bit because I don't ever see it discussed about this coach and my respect for this coach and just kind of my admiration for how good this coach has been. And, the whole conversation kind of reminds me of that Isaiah Thomas clip from Last Dance where he's like, I fit the criteria, I just wasn't selected, right?
I met the criteria to be selected, but I wasn't.
It's like every year, he's got the young, he's young, handsome, charismatic, runs a high level offense. And like, we never discuss him. And I don't really understand why he's overlooked constantly in these conversations. But, in closing, something I would like to see, maybe my bold prediction will be that this is the year that he wins Coach of the Year. Because I think this team's going to be really good. And without Aaron there is no more debate about what this coach can do and the kind of offense that he runs because it's here. And it's been here the whole time, by the way.
Yep.
You don't just move on from Aaron Rodgers. So
no, I
just wanted to get that out of the way. And, I'll pass it back to you to talk about some other shit. But, Packers fans, let me know in the comments what you guys think about it because that's just my perspective. And I'm not a Packers fan, but, outside looking in, that's how I feel about your coach. So I just wanted to give that off.
Yeah. No, he's a fantastic coach. I mean, point blank period. He's really that guy. I'm not sure I could have said it better myself, honestly. It's subjective. And I think you ended it with a perfect cherry on top, right? It's like you don't just willingly move off of Aaron Rodgers. It feels very what Robert Kraft wouldn't let Bill Belichick do with the moving off of Brady to go to Jimmy Garoppolo. We never got to see that version of Bill where he was really, interested in moving forward with Jimmy and kind of moving off of Tom. And, obviously they won a couple more Super Bowls after that,
But they couldn't because they didn't have Matt LaFleur on the offensive side of the ball, frankly.
Yeah.
And Bob Kraft knew that. Like, Josh McDaniels on offense is not the same thing. And there's levels to this. And Green Bay's front office is very good, and they understood what they had in this coaching change because they saw what it was with McCarthy. They saw it. It was the same team.
Yeah, no, period.
Same players, same quarterback, same thing. So how do you go from 7-9, 6-9-1 to 3 in a row winning 13 games? What happened? In the offseason, the team got together in a players-only meeting and was like, all right, guys, we've been straight ass for the last 3 seasons, but maybe this year we should try. What do you guys think? And they just 1, 2, 3 go'd it, and that's why they were double-digit better than they were the year before. Get out of here. It's coaching. It's coaching.
It's totally coaching. Totally. Yeah, so I think if you remember, I mean, you're a Lions fan. You remember the 10 minutes of hell when the Packers had traded for Josh Jacobs. And as Lions fans and as just NFL fans in general, you thought that they just created a two-headed monster with Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. And as a Lions fan myself, I remember sitting there thinking that, and it felt similar to how I felt when I saw that Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors. It was just that like sinking feeling of like, oh no. And luckily it only lasted a few minutes because you ended up cutting Aaron Jones and he ended up signing with the Vikings. I believe that was a mistake. I don't think it was a fatal mistake. I don't think it was something that is going to determine your season type of mistake. I just feel like it was a mistake. And here's why. I think when you look at how, that late season surge success that you saw Green Bay go on, I think it had so much to do with, the offense clicking, but I think the offense clicking had so much to do with Aaron Jones really just balling out the last 4 or 5 games of the season. Against Carolina, he had 127 yards. Against Minnesota, he had 120 yards. Against Chicago, he had 111 yards. Against Dallas, he had 118 yards. And then against San Francisco, he had 108 yards. That's really, 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 really high level production from not only a really good running back. I know that any Packers fan who's listening to me right now goes, yeah, but he's 30 years old and he can't stay healthy. I hear you. I mean, trust me, I know. The problem I have is that when you look at Josh Jacobs, he only had 2 games over 100 yards in 2023. He had 110 versus Kansas City and had 116 versus the Jets. Everything else was pretty mid, honestly. I mean, 48 yards week 1, -2 yards week 2, 62, 58, 69, 77, 35, 61, 98, 39, and 34. 6 total touchdowns on the year. That's not moving the needle for me. You know, I think it moves the needle if I know that I have Aaron Jones backing him up. I don't. I have AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon sucks. Everybody who is a Packers fan, non-Packers fan, anybody who likes football just knows AJ Dillon sucks. And that's not a hate. That's not hating on AJ Dillon the person. The football player. He's just not good. And
we don't know what Marshawn Lloyd is yet either. You know, that's
we
the thing.
we don't. No, that's you know, and that's what I was going to get to in a second. But
part of the argument.
I think the part that worries me more than any of that is that you saw Aaron Jones be this vocal locker room veteran leader that a very young team really, really, really needs. Like he's so core to that group because they are so young, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You need that vet who's that, you know, former Pro Bowler, just really high end player who can just be like, yeah, let's just lock in and go win. Somebody who was part of those, you know, those 13 win teams that we were referencing. Somebody who was Aaron Rodgers' right hand man for years. Like he knows what it looks like to have a successful season. He knows what it looks like to take Matt Lafleur's offense and run it to the highest ability. So he has to be the teacher to all these youngins. And Josh Jacobs to me does not strike me as anybody who is a vocal leader. Or even just a leader. He seems to be very introverted. He seems to be very kind of to himself. And he had a great season in 2022. He was the NFL rushing leader, but I mean, he was given similar production last year and he didn't produce. So I have to wonder if maybe 22, I mean, running backs, they don't last long, you know, NFL, not for long. It's possible we saw Josh Jacobs at his highest level in 2022. Do I believe that to be the case? Not necessarily, but I do look at this and think, ooh, I think that was a mistake moving Aaron Jones off of this team. If you would have kept him on the team, if you would have paid him, you know, if you would have matched whatever Minnesota offered him and taken on that contract or restructured him some way to keep him in Green Bay, I think that makes this team that much scarier moving forward. But you didn't. You put your marbles in the Josh Jacob basket. Again, I get it. He's cheaper. He's younger. He's not as injury prone. All those things, they totally make sense to me. It's not a bad move. I just think the bad move is moving off of Aaron Jones. Again, that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's really well said. And you know, it's a culture situation. And again, I mean, you know, we keep bringing it up, but it is relevant. You know, this is the youngest roster in football. And having a guy like that who's been in the trenches, who's made runs, consistently do that, I think is really, 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 really crucial for a team this young and for a starter just getting his legs. So I'm with you. I think I'll say it like this. I think it was a year early to move off of Aaron Jones.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Because I think the window is now, and you could have probably restructured somebody and brought in Josh Jacobs for the deal, which I do like because Jones hasn't stayed healthy. And, you know, by the way, also great point. I found the same thing during my discovery process. This team did turn around offensively when Jones started playing in the lineup, and it was a huge reason why
once
they
he got
struggled
healthy, man, they were really good.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about this receiving group because it's to me, whenever we do these videos, I like to find something unique to sink my teeth into and kind of go, what do I see about this team that I don't see anywhere else? And for me, this group of receivers, and I'll include the tight ends, is unlike anything in football. For my money, this is the best receiving group in the NFL. Now, I know people are like gonna gasp and be like, "That's bullshit." It's not. There are tandems in the league better. Philadelphia, Miami, Minnesota, Cincinnati, San Francisco 49ers, the list goes on and on. For my money, maybe the Houston Texans you could put above the Packers in terms of their receiving crew. Obviously, they go, very deep as well. But the depth in this group, combined with the age, combined with the youth, is unlike anything I've ever seen. I want to go through the guys and kind of talk about what they all do and why this is so fascinating to me. And I'll very briefly touch on all of them and kind of why it's interesting. It makes me a little concerned as a Lions fan too, again. And that's why we needed to draft those corners this year.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a huge part of it. It wasn't just about Minnesota. It's about this team too. You remember back in the day when you would watch like the X-Men and they would have like the fight montage where like Cyclops would be like lasering and like Wolverine was like stabbing people. And then over there, like Storm was like throwing lightning bolts. And you had like, you know what I mean? Like just all these different characters, winning the fight in different ways. And it almost felt like the other team like never stood a chance, unless it was like Magneto's crew and sometimes they could hang.
You men come at the doors! Everybody get together and hold this line!
But that's kind of what this receiving group reminds me of. You got four guys, and starting off the top, you have kind of your de facto one who's not really a one, and it's the most sure-handed guy, which is Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs gets open. Romeo Doubs catches the ball. Romeo Doubs picks up first downs, and he's very much Jordan Love's go-to guy in crisis. He's kind of that basic
safety net,
wide receiver. Yeah. He doesn't have the star power that some of these other guys have. He's not my favorite of the bunch, but he is kind of the one. He is the most reliable. He is kind of your basic, reminds me a bit of Golden Tate, the way he plays. He's just very straightforward, good wide receiver. Dontayvion Wicks, who was a rookie last season, he's got tremendous size. He's got tremendous height. His route running ability is probably the best of the group, up there with Doubs, probably better than Doubs. The coaching staff has likened it to Davante Adams' route running ability, which is high praise, and he's certainly not Davante Adams yet. But if you look at what he did in the playoffs last year, if you look at what he did a lot in the second half of last season, his precision route running is a problem. His ability to separate and get open using his route running ability is a problem for defenses. And he is, like Jamar said, 7'11". He's always open. It seems like every time they throw him the ball, he's just open. He's catching it with separation. He's got good hands, good size. It's a problem. Christian Watson, again, a guy who, if you really want to, discount what happened last season, I think that it's understandable. But the issue that he had last year was a hamstring issue, and those are very hard to recover from during the season. And essentially what happened was, with the injury to the hamstring, one leg got bigger than the other leg, and he just kept re-aggravating it. Does that make sense? It's like breaking your hand and getting atrophy in one hand, and then you have these compensation injuries because the rest of your, you're using the other hand too hard. It's, it's all medical shit. It's really not that exciting, but, that is what happened. What's really, really interesting about him is because of last season, he's been forgotten about. But the stretch of football he played in the second half of his rookie year in 2022, last year was his second year, is almost unlike anything I've ever seen. Like, rookie wide receivers do not do that. And only a handful of guys in the NFL can put on that kind of display that he did last year. That 4 or 5, I think it was about 4 or 5 game stretch. I don't have the game by game numbers in front of me. But he scored like 7 touchdowns in 5 games as a rookie. And anybody who remembers it, Packers fans, obviously you do, he was electric in the second half of 2022 when he was healthy. And his speed, his hands, his playmaking ability is a problem. I trust the medical staff this year when they say that the issue's been solved with his hamstring. They figured it out. He's got an off season to get healthy. If he stays healthy this season, it's another guy who's going to be a massive problem for opposing defenses because of his big playability. And then last but not least, I think my favorite guy on the whole team is Jayden Reed at wide receiver. Former Michigan State kid, so I knew him pretty well coming out of college. And he's kind of your do-it-all guy. He takes end around carries. He can run the ball like a wide receiver. He's a bit like a Deebo Samuel in the way that Lafleur uses him. He catches screens and makes plays. He breaks tackles. He's great yards after the catch. He can run routes and get open like a wide receiver. He's somebody who I think, him and Watson to me have the star power. And then Wicks and Doubs are like these insanely reliable wide receivers. And the combination of those four guys as a wide receiving unit is like the X-Men. It's pick your poison. You want to double up Christian Watson. You don't want him to get the big play. That's fine. We'll throw underneath to Doubs. We'll take you over the top with Wicks. We'll run bubble screens with Jayden Reed and gash you for 15 yards at a time because you can't tackle him. It's a problem, and it's something I'm really looking forward to this year. And then also, just to top it off, both of their tight ends are 23 years old, Luke Musgraves and Tucker Kraft. So let's just say you figure out a way to neutralize all four of these wide receivers. Well, you got like two huge athletic white dudes named Tucker and Luke running at you full speed, who are both physical, strong receiver. Tucker and Luke with the good hair coming down down the middle, right down Main Street on your ass. And both of these guys can play, by the way, and they're just getting started. So, I just wanted to touch on that unit because I'm just blown away by how good they are, man. I really am.
Yeah, it's a great unit. Yeah, I think ironically, I think when you look at a couple years ago and Watson being the first wide receiver they took with a high draft pick, he was like second round, right? And it was kind of like, they finally got Rodgers some help, and it was kind of like, I guess that's a guy who plays for North Dakota State. Like, we'll see. And then they bring Doubs in, and they both look really good. They both look pretty good to start. And then Watson looks great, right? He takes that step forward. I think next year we're going to see Dontayvion Wicks and Jayden Reed be the clear 1 and 2 on that team.
Possible.
And I think you're going to see Watson and Doubs become that 3 and 4, which is crazy to think because, right, you could. I mean, it's like I said to you in the pre-show. They have 4 number 2s right now. Like, they have 4 guys who would be number 2s on most teams in the NFL. And one of those guys, like the cream is going to rise to the top, right? It's just how it goes. One of those guys is going to become a certified 1, and it's Wicks. It's Wicks for my money, but yeah, no, I'm with you.
No, I mean, and that's crazy because Wicks is like the 4 right now, and you're not wrong. I mean, his ability, his well-roundedness is particularly, like I said, as a route runner and his size, he does have that prototypical wide receiver thing.
Yeah, I know.
But again, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, it's just going to be really hard for defenses to keep, any of these guys neutralized for an entire game. But before we get to the end of this thing, let's go to the other side of the ball because I want to pass it over to you.
Sure.
Last year, Packers fans know this. You guys had a defensive coordinator named Joe Barry who sucked. You fired him. You brought in Jeff Hadley, and so a lot of the feeling is, okay, this defense is going to be better. But, you and I were talking about this, and we kind of had a bit of a different belief on it. So I want you to kind of touch on your opinion of Jeff Hadley and maybe the disappointment to come.
Sure. Yeah, I don't understand the hire very much, and that's not to say he can't be good. I mean, Joe Barry, that's a low bar to get over, right? I mean, you just have to be better than like below average, right? But that's kind of my point. So I look back at Hadley's career, mainly in the NFL. I don't really care what he did in college. He was head coach for the Boston College. He was the DB or the DB and the defense. I think he was the defensive coordinator for Ohio State for a year. So he had success in college, but it's just such a different game now. It's hard to say. Matt Rule was great in college and came to the NFL and was terrible. Jim Harbaugh was great in the NFL, then went to the college and was great. It's a different game. You never know. So 2012, he was the assistant DB's coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 2013, he was the defensive backs coach, so he took over that job. 2014 and 2015, he was the DB coach for the Browns. And then 2016 through 2018, he was the DB coach for the Niners. So I thought, okay, let me look at what these defenses offered, right? 2012 Bucs defense, 29th in total defense. Passing defense was 32nd, so not good, right? I think they had the number 1 pick the next year, didn't they? Or was that a year? Was that a few years later when they had? I guess
right
that
around
would
that
have been
time.
2015. Yeah, they weren't good those few years stretches.
No.
2013, he takes over as the DB coach. Total defense 17th. Passing defense 17th. So obviously it's a huge jump from 32nd. You go from the worst in the league to, pretty mediocre mid. He jumps over to Cleveland. Cleveland in 2014, they have the 23rd ranked defense and they have the 8th best passing defense. So, all things considered, pretty good for a DB's coach. I can only really look at the passing defense, right? 2015 total defense is 27th in the league, but the passing defense regresses significantly, and they're also 22nd in the league. He jumps over to the Niners, 32nd in total defense his first year, 14th in passing defense. So now we're back towards the better half, but still pretty mediocre. 2017, he's got the 24th total defense, 22nd passing defense. So right around where we're used to kind of seeing him here. And then in 2018, the Niners have the 13th best defense, and then they have the 11th best passing defense. So he ends on a high note in San Francisco, and then obviously goes and takes the Ohio State job, and then goes and takes the Boston College job. So I'm just not seeing this as a guy, and let me give you the stats for Joe Barry last year. I mean, they had, they were allowing 22 points a game, which ranked them 17th in the league. Total yards allowed per game was about 352, placing them 23rd. Yards per play allowed 5.5, ranking them 24th, and then third down conversion rate allowed, 42%, ranking them 26th. So he's kind of in that same range that we've seen Hadley be in multiple times in his career. So I just don't see this as some home run hire where I'm looking and saying, oh yeah, this guy can fix the defense. This guy is going to come in and make a huge difference. That run defense is going to get better. That secondary is going to get better. I don't know why I would look at that and think that it's going to be much better than last year. I mean, I would hope that it would be a little better. I mean, as a Lions fan, I'd hope it'd be a little worse, frankly. But as a objective fan, I would hope it would be a little better because that Joe Barry stuff was hard to watch. And then you bring in, you have a Jair Alexander, you brought in an Xavier McKinney, like you have pieces on this defense. You have Rashawn Gary, you have Quay Walker, like you have good players on this defense. Kenny Clark, yeah. Who's the kid they drafted last year? Van Ness, Luke Van Ness, yeah. So there's pieces here. It'll be interesting to see if they can all come together or if this defense is going to be kind of the shortcomings again of this team. And if I was a betting man, I'd say that was going to be the case because I can tell you it's not going to be Matt Lafleur's side of the ball. It's just not, and I think that offense will be humming, for all the reasons we just talked about. But the defense, to me, it leaves a lot to be desired. I think there was probably somebody out there that would have been a better hire, but hey, I don't know. I have no idea. This is just me looking at the data. This is just me looking in the past. Hadley could come in and be an absolute dog, and I wouldn't know, I would just be wrong, and that would be fine. But again, I think we're gonna see this defense be pretty mid next year. I don't see some top 10 jump because he doesn't show me that he's the type of coach that can, rise them above to that.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I definitely think it's important to touch on these things because, the same way with anything, all fan bases get like super hype when a guy who hasn't been great at some coach like gets fired and they bring in a new guy and it's just like, we're saved. And it's like, it doesn't always go that way.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And that's kind of where we are on that. Defensively, I want to stick around for a second. Obviously coaching, I do think that Joe Barry is kind of rudimentary, very like bare bones, non-creative, very little disguising, very little creativity, very little, very few wrinkles in the defense. I do think was a massive problem. But I want to touch on a couple of key personnel pieces, and you named a couple of the guys, but I kind of want to like stick with it just for a quick second because, I do believe that in this division, all four offenses are going to have success, and the difference is going to be whose defense can get it done when it really matters. More so between Green Bay and Detroit because they're both really good offenses and not very good defenses, at least the last couple of years. So it's like, which one of you guys is going to be able to do it? Because I think both offenses can totally eat. I don't believe in Chicago, and I think Minnesota's in a bit of a transition, right? So I'm sticking with these two teams. And a lot of that comes down to personnel. The first guy I want to talk about, I'm going to just touch on three key players and then we'll move on. First guy I really want to talk about is Eric Stokes, cornerback they took from Georgia a couple years ago in the first round, who has had injury problems the last 2 years. Jair is excellent. Jair is getting older.
Yes, he is.
I need to see why this team picked you in the first round. I need you on the field healthy. If this new defense is going to work, you got to be there because you're going to be contending with the likes on any given Sunday of Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, guys like Keenan Allen, guys like Roma Dunze, guys like DJ Moore, God forbid, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys like Jamison Williams. You're going to need to step up in that corner spot and be somebody that can play opposite Jair Alexander because Jair is running out of time of being an elite corner in this league, but he's still there, but he's running out of time. So Eric Stokes is number one. Number two is a guy, for my money, that we consider a friend of the show, right? We all
friend of the show, yep.
Yeah, he's a friend of the show.
Sir.
Yes, he is.
Yes, sir.
Any Michigan man is a friend of the show.
Yep.
Jayden Reed too, because Andy's always been also a state guy too with his family. So if you went to Michigan State or Michigan, you're a friend of the show, right? So
you're cool with us.
I'm going to talk about an old buddy of ours, Rashawn Gary. Who's always been a little more style over substance, I might say. But I do rock with Rashawn. He's 6'5", 277, and he's an edge, and obviously he is a key player on that defense. I was thinking about Rashawn Gary, and I'm like looking at his numbers, and I'm kind of looking at the tape and going over what he's done the last couple of years, and I'm like, God, who does this remind me of in the same situation? And it was bothering me. And I realized that we just did the Lions video, and it reminds me of Aiden. It's like a really freak athlete, first-round pick, Michigan. He's essentially Aiden without the superhero story of being, like, drafted to the Lions. He's been Aiden was a little better than him last season, but they both kind of do the same thing for their teams respectively. And what I need from Rashawn this year, he's been flirting. I mean, he sent a couple drinks over. He wrote his number down and didn't like hand it, but he said hey when he walked in. He's been flirting with the stars over there at the table, right? He's flirted with it. He sat down for a drink and then they asked him to leave, and he went over to the other table and like Aiden, he has games and he has moments and he has little stretches here and there where he sits at that table and everyone kind of is like, hey, welcome to the table. Max Crosby gives a jacket to him, and, Jordan, Nick Bosa sends a drink over his way. And Then he's asked to leave, and he tends to
Yeah,
take off
fully.
for a while, like Aiden.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
this team's going to have success defensively, I need to see a star season from Rashawn Gary. I hope I don't see it as a Lions fan, but I think that
Facts.
he's the front seven glue. He's the guy who's got to have, because he's been on the team for a few years now, and he's, like I said, he's had a couple of good years. He's come close. He's by no means been a disappointment, but he just hasn't crossed that threshold yet. And I want to see if he can do it because he's 26 years old, so now's the time for that edge prime. He's gotten the reps, he's gotten the time. So Rashawn Gary, got to see something from him this year beyond just being a good player. And then lastly, the new addition, Xavier McKinney. You and I talked about this, but it felt like one of those signings to me that got totally tossed under the radar. I mean, I like Josh Jacobs, but like everybody talked about Josh Jacobs. And for my position, give me Xavier McKinney. I'm not so sure that he's not a top 5 safety in the league right now.
Yeah.
116 tackles last season, 78 solo. That's crazy. He absolutely balled in New York last season on a team that I don't think appreciated him and didn't want to pay him the money that I thought he deserved. Green Bay came in and scooped him up. And, we touch on this, right? We touched on it, those of you who will watch our Lions video. Detroit went to the war chest this year and stockpiled our team full of DBs because we looked around and we saw what's going on in the division. It's scary. It's a scary time to be a defensive back in the NFC North. This is a huge get for Green Bay. They need this desperately. They need a real bona fide star defensive back there with Jair. And for my money, Xavier McKinney is that. I'm really, really excited to see what he does in Green Bay next year. But I think that Green Bay fans, you guys just got yourself like a piece, like a real guy that's going to be like a dominant force on your defense and a staple for years to come. He's only 25. He's going to be turning 26 in August. So he's a 98 baby. I mean, he's not at the beginning, but he's got a few good years left of being potentially a star player. So I just wanted to touch on those 3 guys because to me, those are like, I don't know. It seems weird to say this, but besides Jair, those are like the 3 guys that I feel like the defense is kind of reliant upon those 3 dudes to me. Kenny Clark
totally
too,
agree.
honorable mention, but he's always good.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, give me a quick bold prediction and your final record prediction for this team, and we'll play these guys out.
Yeah, I think you're looking at like 11-5. That's or what is it? Is that right now? Is that
11-6 would be
11-6? Yeah. Yeah, 12-5, 11-6. Somewhere in that range. I think you're going to come in second in the division. Sorry, I just do. I like Detroit better than you still. No, I'm not sorry either. For real, I just
screw
Packers
you guys.
Fans, sorry, Mike Greenberg, who's out there saying the Lions 1 year's over because the Packers are coming. Nah. Not happening. Not yet. I think 2 years from now, talk to me. 3 years from now, Super Bowl window really, really opens. I think now you're what you've been, second round knockout. That's kind of where I see you this year. I think you'll win whatever your first playoff game is, and then you'll lose your second one. But it's hard. It's hard to win in the NFL. Everybody's got to stay healthy. You never know. But over the course of the last hour, you can hear that we believe in your coach, we believe in your quarterback, we believe in your wide receivers, and we got to see a little bit from your defense. And I think that's going to be the ultimate, kind of the chink in the armor is the defense. I don't think they improved that much this year.
Yeah, and what's a quick take that nobody else is talking about with this team?
I mean, I kind of said it earlier. But we can clip it for the people who didn't see it. I think Dontayvion Wicks is going to be your like wide receiver 1. I think that's the one. I think that's the guy who is going to set himself apart. As Ian said earlier, he's got that frame. He's an elite route runner. He can go up and just get the ball. And I just see him being the guy. I see him being the Jordan Love guy moving forward.
Yeah, that's great, man. I'm with you on the 11-5, or I'm sorry, 11-6. That's stupid. That stupid 17th game. Get rid of that.
I know, it's so dumb.
11-6 seems right to me. Second in the division.
Yep.
I think what I'll do real quick before we go is kind of do like a yay and a nay situation, right, to Packers fans. I just want to say one thing that's bothering me a little bit with the Packers is the fact that like the media seems eager to like already put them above the Lions, and I don't really mess with that. It's annoying as a Lions fan to kind of see that constantly, but to give you guys your due and to give, to have some bonding, some Lion Packer bonding, and it's hard to do when one franchise is horrible always and one's elite pretty much every year, it seems like. But I think one thing we can agree on is fuck the Bears. And to be honest with you, man, like Lions Nation is being very disrespected by the media with this Chicago Bears talk, but so are you guys. And I don't think you're as good as Detroit right now. I think that we're right here in our moment, but I think next year could be a different story. But you're a damn good football team, man. And I want to give that to like a rival fan base, because I don't want it to come across as like, oh, we're sour grapes about the Bears, blah, 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 blah. It has more to do with the media. And I don't know where Packers fans stand on this. Maybe you guys could write something in the comments. But the way the media has just disregarded both of our teams to like make way for a Chicago team that I don't believe in is really annoying. So
totally
I really like this team next year. I think they're going to be really good. I just don't quite think they're Detroit, and thank God for that, but we will see.
Yep.
And I said it earlier, but my bold prediction for next season is that Matt Lafleur wins Coach of the Year. I think there's a handful of candidates, but I think he's got a real chance to knock it out. So we'll see how that ages. We'll see how all of this ages, but it's going to be a fun year in the NFC North, man. So Packers fans, thank you guys for hanging with a couple of Detroiters. Yeah, man, go Pack, go, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Gross. I don't want to say that.
Right.
I hated saying that. But yeah, there it is.
Fuck
Go
the
Pack,
Bears.
go.
Fuck
We'll
the
do it
Bears.
one.
Fuck the Bears.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you guys, and thanks, Andy. We'll see you on the next one. Okay.
Peace.
Peace.